Welcome back, everyone. Today I want to talk about 3D printing, and you may or may not own a 3D printer, and if you don't own one, you may feel like you're limited in resources to be creative. But from as many videos as I've watched, I know for a fact that even though these people that have a high degree of talent in custom RCs and whatever else, they're still too heavily reliant upon the computer about manipulating lines and code to make a final finished product, and it ends up being very time consuming for them. They forget about an ancient way of doing things. And here are three different examples. This is a 1/16 Camaro, and a Camaro does not look like that naturally, you say. So this is not a scale representation. In other words, this is not true to scale because I have put these fender flares on there, front and rear on both sides. I've put the cowl induction hood on there, which may be hard to discern on camera. And I first started this with clay. I wanted to get a visual idea of what it would look like, how I would best form the body into a wider platform, because this body didn't fit the Traxxas Latrax chassis. It was very close. I didn't have to do anything. The wheelbase was fine. This happens to be made by New Bright, by the way. The original body was made by New Bright. It's been through a lot of hell and back, but the original body is made by New Bright if you want to try and source one out to put on your Latraxis vehicle. Clay. Shape it, form it, get your fingers wet, bend it, and, move it around, grab a toothpick, a knife, a butter knife, a straight edge, whatever the case may be, and you start forming it and bending it, and you can even let it dry. And then once it's dry, you can lay fiberglass over it and then pull off a fiberglass part if you wanted to do it that way. So I had a visual idea once I played around with clay, and then I just put Bondo in its place, and then I redid the same thing. The cowl induction hood is a whole different story. I made a mold out of ABS plastic. I simply used MEK to glue the mold together. Then I mixed up a bunch of epoxy, and then I simply poured it inside the mold, and then I let it dry. There was some air bubbles in there, but they weren't bad. And then I simply did some final shaping around the window to kind of match it up, and then blend it into the body. That's just a solid hunk of epoxy right there, and it's not the best, but if you have a 3D scanner, you've already saved yourself a lot of time, because if you were looking for a file of a I think this is 1968 Camaro, maybe a 67 because it's got the wing window. 1967 Camaro to fit on your Latrax body with a cowl induction hood and widened fenders. Good luck. Good fucking luck, right? Go back. Quit being so technology dependent, right? Use your hands, right? So I apply some clay on one side, apply it on the other, shape it and form it, and make sure they visually look the same. It's not the best, it's not perfect, but if you wanted to be anal about it, you could sand out the details and make it more perfect. We'll talk about the yellow one last. Here's a 1/24 scale. I believe technically this body is a 1/25 scale. I believe the chassis was called a 1/24 scale. This was a Sino Hobby, if I remember correctly. I did have to cut the chassis in half and extend it a little bit, but this one was done differently. Again, if you're to try and find a file online, try and take advantage of somebody else's hard work, it's good luck. Some of you may not even know what a Chevy Vega looks like. And I promise you, if you were to look up a 1972 Chevy Vega, it is not going to look anything like this. Again, I blended the body. In such a way that the fenders became part of the body, right? There was no fake wheel flares like you see on a lot of the... people like to bolt on wheel flares on a real vehicle, and to them it makes a car look more aggressive. I don't know, and I see them doing it on their RC vehicles. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on what the type of vehicle, but they'll put like a wheel flare similar to this type of design, right, on this type of body, and it just looks fucking ugly. Whereas if it's the whole fender is flared out, it looks more natural. So I put the skirts on there, right? Everything is done by hand. And if you wanted to make a lightweight body, I could now take this into a vacuum former, or maybe even make a silicone mold of it. And then after the silicone mold was done, I could pour some, what do they call that shit? Some plaster of Paris, make a plaster mold out of that, and then once that hardened up all the way, I could use that for a vacuum forming block, right? And then you can see how much wider I made. And then I made a, what do they call that fucking, a rear diffuser down there. And this is Grumpy's Toy. If you want to search out the model kit, you can see how much different it is. Here's kind of a front view of the hood scoop that I made, the fenders, the mirrors I put on. Those are custom mirrors. Duckbill spoiler. The spoiler on the fender flares is custom. The step up is custom. It's all done by hand, and in all actuality, it didn't take me very long. The sanding probably took longer than anything else, but this is, look, left to right symmetry, done by hand, not requiring some complicated machine. I'm not having to rely upon a 3D scanner. Get a closer look at the grill. There is actual cutout. Maybe hard to discern that. Maybe on the other side. But there is actual a vent. Yeah, it's going to be hard to... maybe you can just see light through the other side. Right? So that's hollow. There's an actual vent there. Maybe if I tilt it enough on the other side, yeah, you can barely see light through there. But there's a vent here and a vent here that pokes all the way through the fender, right? Again, a little tiny detail. All the little details add up. I'm not reliant upon technology, and plus, if you're to print this out, you'd probably, I don't know, waiting 3 days maybe to fucking print it out, standing it up on the edge, building up your support brackets and whatever else that needs to happen. Okay, so now the next, moving on. Zoom out a little bit. So this particular body happens to fit a Red Cat Racing short course truck that I turned into a crawler. I wanted something different, and there really wasn't anything available for the Red Cat Racing. Now you have to kind of ignore this because this is made out of cheap balsa. This was originally supposed to be for aesthetics, not actual function. And there was a light bar that went across here that had 2 more lights on it. Obviously I rolled it, knocked it off. I had it filled with logs when I was making a video of it, crawling around, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, this started off as a piece of foam board, right, to get the shape that I wanted. And then once I was happy with the foam board shape, I applied a light coat of Bondo in different places, hot glue in other places, and then I started adding fiberglass, and then the foam board melted away, and then whatever foam board didn't melt away, I simply sanded it out. Like these wheel flares, or the thickness of them is about 3/16 of an inch. This is solid fiberglass, right? Solid fiberglass. Solid fiberglass. These little bits and pieces that I put on here, well, probably not the gas can because it's pretty well protected. Gas can made out of a solid piece of a couple pieces of balsa and a toothpick that I cut in half. That's what gives you that handle type look right there. Very simple. It took less than an hour to make 2 gas cans. And I put one on each, and here's what's left of a shovel. This is a barbecue skewer. They call it a kebab, I think it is. And then there was a aluminum shovel that I made and it had attached there. They're in the scale accessories somewhere on my page. Now this body is not the best design, but I wanted something different. And again, this is going to be a vacuum piece. This is going to be what do they call it? The master. I guess you want to call it the master. But I decided to take it out test driving. I couldn't wait to build one. I still haven't gotten around to building one. It's been over a year. Maybe one day before I die, I'll make a vacuum former. I'd really like to make a vacuum former so that way I can replicate some of these things. So we got clay. We got more clay and Bondo epoxy. We have melted ABS and Bondo. And here we have foam board and fiberglass. All done by hand. Done by hand. It really doesn't take too much time. And then if you wanted to 3D scan it, now you have a master that's tough as nails. And then you can print your delicate part right on your 3D printer, right? It's more easy that way. I wanted somewhat of a truck bed in here, but it didn't end up with much. It's only about 3/8 of an inch deep, and it didn't quite work out that well. The mold was coming apart. This was my very first time working with fiberglass, but it still ended up okay. I'm totally happy with it. This is going to be a crawler body, but I've since moved that crawler back into a performance truck, so I still want to make a lightweight Lexan body of this. And I put on extra bits down here to help try and protect it, but I don't know, whatever comes out in the vacuum form molder, just trim it out and fucking worry about it on the end. I didn't put much detail on the front because artistically I was lost. This is just part of a parts tree. I glued on there, and then I had some extra headlights or fog lights, so I drilled some holes and set them in there somewhat flush. I honestly don't like the looks of the front, but maybe there's some of you out there that can change that and make that better. I don't know. I'm at a loss for it personally, but it is what it is. So don't be limited to the technology. Oh man, I need to save up money and I need to buy the printer. Now I got to go online. I got to look and find, see who recommends the best printer, which one has the highest amount of detail, which one can print the fastest. Then I got to find the files to do it. Good fucking luck. You can spend hours and hours and hours programming in something just to print a part. By the time you figure out how to program it, I already have a part in my hand. Whether it's made out of plastic, metal, Bondo, whatever the case may be. 3D printing has some good capabilities, right? If you're in an apartment, you can't make a bunch of noise. Yeah, fire up the 3D printer. Make yourself a couple of, some people call them jerry cans, but they're gas cans, whatever the case may be. Make yourself a shovel because you don't know how to roll a toothpick and a piece of aluminum. Whatever the case may be, right? But never underestimate the power of your hands and your mind. You want something, get it done. You don't need something so fucking complicated. Other than that, I hope somebody somewhere gets something out of that. Right? These are all handmade. Handmade. And it didn't take fucking a year, a week, 3 days, and 10 hours. Over exaggerating, but you get my point. I know how long it takes to print shit. I know things are getting better, but I don't know, some of the stuff, the materials for printing is just not that good unless you're using like stinted metal and a laser printer and you're making something out of metal. I think that's probably the best one in my opinion if you can afford that. But other than that, get creative, get inspired, and have a good day.